I'd say my favorite thing about college football is definitely the quarterback position, as I love seeing the recruits come in, cycle out, transfer, and eventually end up in the NFL or end up as busts. I think it's all just fascinating, and in today's video, I want to talk about the 2025 freshman class. I'm running out of time to do a spotlight on this year's class, which I think is absolutely awesome. And in today's video, I want to introduce you to the 22 four-star recruits in the class of 2025 and give you a brief update on who they are, how they became so highly regarded, and where they are at for this season. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about the historic 2025 quarterback class. So before we talk about the 22 four-star quarterbacks in this year's class, there are some hidden gems that I want to highlight. At one point, Carter Smith was a four-star recruit who was committed to Michigan, but he ended up flipping to Wisconsin and fell to a three-star. Tramell Jones Jr. was also a four-star quarterback who was committed to Florida State, but he ended up flipping to Florida. Blake Hebert at one point was a five-star who ended up going to Clemson and then flipped to Notre Dame. TJ Latif was a four-star for most of the cycle, but ended up falling to a three as well. The same can be said for Brady Hart, who is now a three-star going to Texas A&M, and Kevin Sperry. Kevin Sperry is one of the top guys at one point, and he was committed to Oklahoma, but then flipped and went to Florida State. The final guy is Chris Denson, who was a late riser in the class of 2025, and is now at Clemson and is third on the depth chart. Those are 7 guys who are ranked as 3 stars that I think could have a big impact, or at one point were super noteworthy in this class. Now let's get to number 22. To me, one of the most ridiculous names in this class is Tory Newkirk. A year ago, nobody knew who this guy was, as coming out of Maury High School, he ended up winning back-to-back state titles, went 15-0 in 2024, and then had a combined 4,500 yards and 56 touchdowns this past season. Newkirk went from a 0-star recruit to getting an offer from Bill Belichick in North Carolina. He committed there and then became a 4-star. He's one of 2 freshman blue-chip quarterbacks on the roster, and I'm definitely curious to see what he's going to do at North Carolina. At number 21, we have Tristan Tia. This feels a lot like Aiden Childs a couple of years ago, as Oregon State got Tia on early, and coming out of Amador Valley High School in California, he was really solid. He threw for 3,500 yards and 29 touchdowns his senior year, and also was really solid on the ground. He was also a Little League star, and he signed with Oregon State and eventually got bumped up to a 4. This is a huge get for the Beavers, and I think he definitely has a chance to play in 2026 for them. Without a doubt, the most controversial player on the list is Madden Imaliava, as he's the younger brother of Nico. He went to Long Beach Poly High School, and as a senior, he ended up throwing for 3,600 yards and 43 touchdowns, and only had 4 picks. He was really solid, and would decide to stay in the SEC and go to Arkansas. Unfortunately though, just like his brother, he'd end up transferring, as he would go to UCLA. I say controversial because there's definitely some disagreements with how he handled NIL with the Razorbacks, but still, Madden is a talented player and will definitely be in line to play for the Bruins here at some point. At number 19, we have Texas Longhorns freshman KJ Lacey. KJ ended up going to Saraland High School, which is located in Alabama, and actually won Mr. Football in the state. He was absolutely solid, as during his senior season, he threw for over 3,000 yards and 40 touchdowns, and he was productive as a 4-year starter in high school. He's a little bit undersized, but he decided to sign to play for Texas, and he'll be in a loaded quarterback room. I doubt KJ Lacey sees the field this year, but he will likely battle it out with Dia Bell in 2026. SMU had quite the interesting 2025 quarterback cycle, as originally they had Keelan Russell signed, but Russell became a 5-star and flipped to Alabama. The guy that SMU got instead was a player by the name of Ty Hawkins. He ended up at IMG Academy this past season as he threw for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. I'm not quite sure what happened his final season, as there might have been some sort of injury, but he was really good the 3 years prior and ended up choosing SMU over Baylor, TCU, and Houston. He's ranked as the number 18 quarterback in the class, and SMU doesn't get many 4-stars, but he should be really good for them, and I think will battle it out for the starting job next year. For our next guy, we have to talk about George MacIntyre. He's the nephew of former Colorado and Florida International head coach Mike MacIntyre, and at one point George was a top 10 player. On the channel a couple of years ago, I did an early spotlight on the 2025 class, and George was the guy. At 6'6", he came out of Brentwood Academy and was really good. I have no idea why he dropped, as he threw for over 8,000 yards and 62 touchdowns during his high school career, and did well in everything. As I said, George fell to the number 17 quarterback in the class, but with all that happened this past spring at Tennessee, I think he'll battle it out next season and hopefully win the starting job for them. Ranked right in front of George, we need to talk about Luke Nickel. My favorite thing in the quarterback recruiting world is when a player goes from an unknown or a 3-star and gets bumped up to a blue chip. Luke Nickel is a good example of that, as coming out of Milton High School in Alpharetta, Georgia, he was really good. He ended up leading his team to a perfect 15-0 record and threw for 3,744 yards and 44 touchdown passes. In total, he had over 10,000 yards and 107 touchdowns and ranks inside the top 15 for high school quarterbacks in Georgia high school football history. Luke Nickel was really good and ended up getting bumped from a 3-star to the number 16 quarterback in the class, and he has a real and bright future at Miami, especially after Carson Beck leaves this season. For our next guy, we need to talk about Akili Smith Jr. His dad, Akili Smith, was a starting quarterback at Oregon and was drafted super high into the NFL, and just like him, his son was really good. He played at Lincoln High School, which is located in California, and he threw for nearly 7,000 yards as a high school starter. He decided to commit to Oregon early and sign with the Ducks, and originally he was supposed to be one of two with Jaron Keawe-Sagapitelli, but JKS would transfer to Cal, and Akili Smith is now the number 1 guy for Oregon and their lone quarterback in this year's cycle. He won't play this season, but I think he'll definitely start battling it out next year. The Georgia Bulldogs got their blue chip quarterback in the 2025 cycle, and his name is Ryan Montgomery. Montgomery was definitely an interesting case, as he had an older brother who was a 4-star recruit who ended up at Ohio State, and while he was at Findlay, he was insane. He went to the same school that Ben Roethlisberger went to. Findlay threw for 3,400 yards and 38 touchdowns, while also rushing for 10 more touchdowns on the ground. He was hoping to have an even better senior season, but unfortunately he suffered a season-ending injury, and Montgomery didn't play. He's now a little bit rusty, and he will arrive at Georgia as the 3rd or 4th string quarterback for them. I'm not quite sure if he's the future guy there, but Montgomery is definitely really good. TCU does a really good job in terms of evaluating the quarterback position coming out of high school, as guys like Max Duggan, Josh Hoover, and House Heine all became big names. They did the same thing in the 2025 cycle as they got Adam Schobel. Schobel was originally committed to Oklahoma State, but he would eventually flip to TCU. He was one of the better quarterbacks coming out of the Texas high school football system, as he went to Columbus High School, which is located in Columbus, Texas, and in total, he ended up finishing with 7,800 yards and 94 touchdowns during his career. He did have some family members that played in the NFL, so it's why he ended up at TCU, but the Horned Frogs got a steal and a late riser in Schobel. At number 12, we need to talk about Bill Belichick's freshman quarterback, Bryce Baker. He's the second guy alongside of Torrey Newkirk, but honestly, I think Bryce gets on the field if their quarterback Gio Lopez struggles. Baker ended up going to East Forsyth High School, which is located in North Carolina, and this guy was absolutely insane. During his final 2 seasons in high school, he passed for 6,600 yards and 79 total touchdowns. Baker at one point, I believe, was close to a 5-star, but he ended up settling on the number 12 quarterback in the nation. Baker, in my opinion, has what it takes to be a really good player, but I don't think he'll play much this year. I think he'll get in garbage time and then take over as the starter next season. That's just my take. Now into the back half of the video, we need to talk about AJ Hill. I cannot remember the last time Memphis landed a 4-star quarterback, but AJ Hill is exactly that. Coming out of Houston County High School, which is located in Georgia, AJ Hill was really good. As a 4-year starter, Hill threw for over 10,000 yards and is one of the best quarterbacks in Georgia high school football history. He had 129 passing touchdowns, but chose to go to Memphis over Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. Currently, the Memphis Tigers are starting their 6th-year quarterback in Brendan Lewis, but I'd not be surprised if AJ Hill sees the field as a true freshman at some point, and he's going to be the guy in the future for them. At number 10, we have one of the biggest names in the class, and that is Julian Juju Lewis. Julian was ranked as the number 1 quarterback in the 2026 class a couple of years ago, and would originally decide to commit to USC. That was after he was at Carrollton High School in Georgia, and he was just really good. He ended up winning 39 games as a 3-year starter and had over 11,000 yards in just 3 years. He would decide to reclassify and eventually flip from USC to Colorado. He's currently battling it out with Caden Salter for the starting job up in Boulder, but it looks like Caden's going to be the guy, and Julian probably takes over next year in my opinion. Similar to Ryan Montgomery, who is from the state of Ohio and is going to Georgia, Matt Zollers is a big quarterback who's coming off of an injury his senior season. Instead, though, Zollers was from the state of Pennsylvania and went to Springford High School. He threw for over 6,000 yards and 70 touchdowns in his first couple of seasons, but had a terrible injury his senior year. Some think it could definitely hold him back while he is at Mizzou, but currently he is battling for the starting job between Sam Horn and Bo Pribula. Zollers is obviously going to lose the job and just redshirt this season, but he's one of the highest ranked recruits that Mizzou's ever gotten at the quarterback position, and many think he'll be really good for them in the future. Of all the QBs in the 2025 cycle, I feel like nobody is talking about Camario Taylor. Coming out of the state of Mississippi, Taylor was just a 3-star recruit for quite some time, but after an incredible senior season, in which he had over 2,400 yards and 30 touchdowns through the air, and over 1,115 on the ground, Taylor became a 4-star. He decided to commit to Mississippi State, and his ranking would just continue to boost. He also has some family connections at Mississippi State, but for now, it looks like they are going to go with Blake Shapen, then transfer quarterback Luke Kromenhoek, and Taylor will just redshirt and hopefully be the guy of the future for Jeff Lebby. In terms of the most ridiculous name in the 2025 class, or maybe just the hardest to pronounce, we have Jaron Kiawe Sagabatelli. He ended up going to Campbell High School in the state of Hawaii and is the next great gunslinger out of the Aloha State. He passed for 3,400 yards and 46 touchdowns as a senior and went from a 3-star recruit to a 5-star. I know at least at one point he was listed as a 5, but ultimately he's a high 4 now. He originally decided to commit to Cal, but then flipped to Oregon and then transferred to Cal. It was definitely odd, but it doesn't matter. He's now named the starter for the Cal Golden Bears over Devin Brown, so he'll get an opportunity to play right away and could be one of the biggest names early on from this cycle. At number 6, we have quarterback Deuce Knight. People have been hyping up Deuce Knight for a couple of years now. In total, during his 4 years of high school football, Deuce passed for 7,855 yards with 56 touchdowns, and he also ran for 1,361 yards and 31 touchdowns. He's been a 5-star recruit his entire career, and originally Knight was committed to Notre Dame, but would later flip to Hugh Freeze and Auburn. Apparently at Auburn this upcoming season, there might be 3 quarterbacks playing, at least to start out, so Deuce is going to get a chance, but I bet Jackson Arnold ends up winning the job, and then next season Deuce takes over, or if not, he may transfer pretty quickly. At number 5, we have another quarterback who many don't really know about, and that is Malik Washington. He ended up going to Archbishop Spalding High School, which is located in the state of Maryland. While he only ended up having about 2,000 yards and 30 combined touchdowns as a senior, he ended up going 25-0 in conference play as a starter, and is a member of the 24/7 Sports Freaks list. This guy has incredible athleticism, and he's currently battling it out with UCLA transfer Justin Martin for the starting job at Maryland. I cannot remember the last time Maryland got a top 5 quarterback recruit. Honestly, it may not have ever happened, and he might start week 1 for them, but if not, I think he'll be the starter by the end of the year. At number 4, we get to our first 5-star quarterback on the list, and that is Husan Longstreet. I feel like of the 4 5-star quarterbacks, nobody is really talking about Husan, and I'm not sure why. He went to Centennial High School in California, and while battling an injury his senior season, he still threw for 1,600 yards and 19 touchdowns, and was also a factor on the ground. That came after a 3,000-yard season back in 2023, and he originally decided to commit to Texas A&M. But after the whole Julian Lewis saga, he would decide to flip to USC, and is now Lincoln Riley's guy. With Jaden Mayava as the starter, it looks like Husan will probably be the backup, but if Jaden struggles, I would not be shocked to see Longstreet see the field this season. At number 3, we have Tavian St. Clair. He's the number 4 player in the nation, so these top-end quarterbacks are truly elite. St. Clair grew up always wanting an Ohio State offer, and he went to Bellefontaine High School, which is located in Ohio. After his freshman season, he started to get recruiting hype, and in total, while he was there, he became Ohio's Mr. Football in 2024 and had over 10,000 yards and 100 touchdown passes. St. Clair also has the physical traits that you're looking for in a quarterback, and he's supposed to be the next big thing at Ohio State, but for now, he'll be 3rd on the depth chart behind both Lincoln Kienholz and Julian Sayin, and it looks like Tavian will take over in 2027. At number 2, we have Keelan Russell, who's considered one of the best quarterback recruits ever. I've already briefly talked about his story, as when we talked about Ty Hawkins I mentioned him, but originally, Keelan decided to commit to SMU. Russell is from Duncanville High School in Texas, and he actually became the National Gatorade Football Player of the Year. He threw for over 3,000 yards and 50 touchdowns as a senior, and he blew up from a 4-star to a 5. He decided to leave SMU in the dust and commit to Alabama, and he was trying to battle it out for the starting job, but ultimately lost to both Ty Simpson and Austin Mack. But Russell is so good that I could see him getting on the field in certain packages, and he's definitely probably going to be the guy next year. And finally, at number 1, we have Bryce Underwood. He's one of the most hyped up quarterback recruits ever, and he was recently named the starter for the Michigan Wolverines. Originally, he was committed to the LSU Tigers for quite some time, but after Michigan desperately needed an upgrade at the quarterback spot, They found a way to get him a historic NIL deal, and Underwood is that dang good. He was the quarterback for Belleville the last few years, and he put up ridiculous numbers. He passed for 11,488 yards and 179 total touchdowns. Combining that with his 6'5" frame, Underwood really has everything. He's going to be one of the most hyped freshman quarterbacks we've seen in a long time, and we'll see if he either cripples under the pressure or becomes a star. So yeah, today I talked about all 22 four-star quarterbacks in the 2025 cycle, and I gave you guys some brief insight into who they are, their position on the depth chart, and my thoughts on them. But what do you guys think? Who's your favorite freshman quarterback in college football? Which one of these guys do you think will be the best by the end of it? And who's an underrated player I did not get a chance to add on the list? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out some of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.